I am recording this video to add my voice to those who are protesting the treatment of His Holiness the 17th Karmapa by the governments of India and China, and to the continued human rights violations around the world that are endorsed by President Obama and the American government. The following is an excerpt from a letter written by the community of the Kaju Monastery in Wappinger Falls, New York. As the name of His Holiness Karmapa is currently and correctly being cleared of any hint of wrongdoing, the recent flurry of unwarranted suspicion of this revered teacher highlights a chronic injustice that cannot be allowed to continue. His Holiness the Karmapa and His Eminence Tao Situ Rinpoche are both world-renowned religious figures of impeccable character, and in the Tibetan tradition they alternate as teacher and student from lifetime to lifetime. These two distinguished teachers, for some reason, are restricted from travel within India and throughout the world. With disbelief and unbearable sadness, we, students of these accomplished teachers, have watched this injustice continue for more than a decade. It is time for it to end right now. The previous Karmapa, who escaped from Tibet into India after the communist invasion of 1959, foretold that the next Karmapa would be born in eastern Tibet and later return to India. The current Karmapa was indeed discovered in eastern Tibet in 1992 and recognized by both the Dalai Lama and the Chinese government. This was also the first time since 1949 that publicly acknowledged Tukos, incarnate lamas, were officially permitted in Tibet, thanks to the power and precedence of the Karmapa. His teacher, Tao Situ Rinpoche, who resides in his monastery in India, oversaw the young Karmapa's enthronement in the traditional seat of all the Karmapas in this specific monastery in Tibet. Buddhists all over the world rejoiced at the return of the Karmapa to the world. It soon became clear, however, that the Chinese communist authorities would never permit the Karmapa the freedom to travel abroad, even though that was absolutely necessary to further his Buddhist studies and properly perform the religious duties of his station. At 14 years old, in the year 2000, the Karmapa fled the oppression of communism for the freedom of India. Although the Indian government graciously approved the Karmapa's request to remain in India, he is under surveillance 24 hours a day, watched by both Indian and exiled Tibetan officials. He is required to live as a boarder in a monastery affiliated with a different lineage. His movement is restricted. He cannot even visit the monastery of his teacher, Tao Situ Rinpoche, only an hour's drive away. With the exception of a few chaperoned field trips to holy sites, he is forced to remain under what amounts to house arrest. Now the Karmapa has found himself in India in the same oppressive conditions that he has sought to escape in China. Tao Situ Rinpoche is subjugated to similar constraints. In the mid-1990s, on his return home after enthroning the Karmapa in Tibet, he was barred from re-entering India. After finally receiving permission to return to his own monastery in 1999, he is now forbidden to leave the country unless he never returns. No reason has ever been given for the restrictions imposed on these two Buddhist masters. What crimes have they committed that would justify the infringement of their basic human right to travel freely? Over 100,000 Tibetans have found refuge in India, and they travel freely as a matter of course. Other high Buddhist leaders, even those who merit his title, His Holiness, are immediately afforded full rights of freedom when they arrive in India from Tibet. It is disturbing that the two lamas teaching compassion and virtue are denied their basic human rights. As devoted students of these two distinguished lamas, we have waited for years for this inexplicable misadventure to conclude. It has dragged on far beyond the point of tolerance and must end. We will not stop demanding their freedom until they attain it. We speak for the Kaju lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, and we speak for all Buddhists in the world who recognize the purity and integrity of these two holy men. With sincere appreciation for India's long history of religious freedom, we appeal to the Indian government and exiled Tibetan authorities to look carefully at what is occurring here and to grant these two peerless teachers their basic human rights. Though the current crisis regarding funds may will be resolved within a short time. This situation points to the continued human rights violations that China continues to engage in to suppress free thoughts and action. This situation is also one that shows the continued indifference of President Barack Obama and the United States government to the use of force and torture by other countries so long as there is a perceived economic benefit to be had. Some time ago, the Chinese delegation to Washington was treated to a full state dinner. Apparently the Chinese felt slighted the last time around when a full state dinner was not provided. Meanwhile, the political and spiritual leader of Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, was delegated to a short meeting in a conference room. This gives new meaning to a murderer being given a last meal, but of course there will be no punishment, so it seems as though nobody cares. This is one of a long line of choices that the American government has made that places money and ease above that of people who are suffering. After the Holocaust of World War II, Japan was rebuilt and there was continued cries for Germany to be reunited, while at the same time the Arab nations of the Middle East were allowed to try and exterminate the Jewish homeland simply over oil. The genocide in Darfur, the Rwandan genocide, the slaves who are forced to work in diamond mines so that the women of America can get that big engagement ring. What a very sad commentary on American values. Barack Obama swept into office as the first black president on the wings of the promise of change, transparency, and a mandate to change the world. Sad to say, so far things seem to be just business as usual. It is time for each of us to take a good, long, hard look at what we hold dear and the values we consider to be important. We must demand change, first in ourselves and then in our elected officials. This can be a difficult task, but it can be done. For months, the world came together as dozens of miners were trapped, and the outpouring of support for the people of Egypt seemed at times to reach a fever pitch. The very hard part is to sustain this effort and not to fall back into bad habits once the current crisis is not the lead story in the news. I have left a picture of the Karmapa up during this entire video in the hope that people will truly listen to the message and not be caught up in images, and to show that this is not my message, but a message that can be found in all the major faiths of the world. All faiths teach methods that allow us to sustain the effort needed to change the world and to make it a more compassionate place for all. My voice is not important, and I have no illusions that this or any of my other videos or actions will have a shattering impact on the world. But if I can be just a single drop in a vast wave of positive change, that will be enough. Thank you for listening, and as always, feel free to leave any comments or criticisms about this video on the comments page of my YouTube website. Thank you very much.